Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Still Roses podcast. This podcast is for women by women. I am very excited to introduce all of you today to our guest. Kim Grustas is the founder and owner of Good For You Girls Natural Skincare, inspiring moms to protect what's most precious, our girls. For over 30 years, Kim has been instrumental in the growth of some of the country's largest nutrition and supplement companies as a graphic designer, creative consultant, and marketing advisor. Kim has lived and breathed the natural products industry, and her mission is to support girls in honoring their bodies and their rite of passage into womanhood. Kim, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Jenny. I'm thrilled.
I would love for you. So you already were working in the beauty industry. So I would really love to hear from you. I have a couple of questions, but I would love for you to introduce yourself to the audience, and tell them about yourself and how you ended up on this path.
So it's really crazy. I look back at my career and I say it kind of led me here, right? It chose me rather than me chose it, kind of thing. So I was a creative director by skill and trade and passion. But I was also a fitness nut. So when I ended up in my first jobs, I started in publishing. And then I went to work for a really large sport nutrition company as their director of international marketing. And then eventually the creative director for the entire company. And it was very fast paced. I was working with bodybuilders, fitness models, athletes. And I was learning, because in this business, you really have to research, because when you're working with protein powders, amino acids, creatines, all of those things that affect the body, and you're marketing it, you have to do the research. Okay, how is this affecting the body? So I was hooked. I just really loved the research. I didn't give myself credit for being kind of a research geek. So I did that until the company sold. And then that was several years. And then I went to work for an advertising agency. And I sort of had made a name for myself as being a female in a man's world. Mm-hmm. And I was talking very differently about the ingredients at the time. It wasn't all about the muscle. It was about the ingredients, the quality of ingredients, and how they function. And like I said, how they function in the body. So I went to work for an advertising agency, and all of these brands started coming out of the woodwork to hire me. And they offered me a partnership, and I said, no, thank you. And I started my own agency in 2000. And then so I was taking on sport nutrition. And at that time, I was really introduced to the health and beauty, the natural products industry. And I just loved their passion. Like, it was, again, in 2000, it was still really, I call it the hairy armpit Birkenstock days, where it was the natural people. They were freaky, like, oh my gosh, and they were like making this stuff in their garage, but it was, they knew better than everybody, right? It was crazy. But I just fell in love with it, and I started to take on brands. So over my career, I've developed dozens of brands from the ground up. And so again, in 2000, I started my own shop, and then my daughter was born 4 months after I started my agency. My first daughter was born.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And we had been trying for a while, so I sort of gave up, but, so anyway, so that was a lovely surprise. And she was born with severe asthma and allergies. So we were running to the emergency room, EpiPens, breathing treatments. She had it was an upper airway trigger. So it was, anytime she would get a viral infection, which in young, babies, it's so quick, right? And her little body would just go lethargic. And
oh gosh,
there was no warning. There was no wheezing. There was nothing. She would just like limp like a baby, like a rag doll. She would just go limp. And so one of the emergency room doctors said, do you realize how serious this is? And I said, yes, I do. So that led me down the rabbit hole to understand why her triggers, what is triggering her. She also had food allergies. Mm-hmm. So we didn't recognize, as an infant, you don't recognize those until you start feeding them at 9 months. But anyway, feeding them real food at 9 months. So anyway, I was down the rabbit hole of research, every candle, every scent, every laundry, all of it gone. Because when you have a sick kid, you'll just do anything to make them feel better. And you don't want to purposely put anything in front of them that's going to harm them. So we figured out her triggers. I was the mom at every function with the EpiPen in my purse all the time. And then 2 years later, my younger daughter was born. My second daughter was born. She had a touch of asthma, but she also had a hive disorder. And then she also had eczema. So I'm like, geez, okay, now we're going down the rabbit hole of skin. Mm-hmm. So by this point, I was just a research freak. I'm researching. And I controlled everything that went in and on their bodies. right? And I became kind of the go-to mom when people would ask, hey, this, that. And it just was our way of life. It wasn't like odd for us. It was just that, hey, we didn't buy these products. We didn't.
Right.
And I'm not, I'm a high heels, dressed up girly, hair and makeup.
Right.
I love, I am not the earthy, crunchy type, but that's how I lived, right? That's how I always appreciated the beauty sector. So fast forward to 2008. My daughters loved Hannah Montana. I think everybody remembers Hannah Montana.
Mm-hmm.
So we even brought them to the concert, which was super fun. So my daughter, there was a bath set at the end cap of Target, and she just beeline for it. She was 8 years old.
Yeah.
And she beeline for it, and she picked it up, and I flipped it over, and I went, wow. Like, oh my gosh, there was like 4 lines of dyes. But it was ridiculous. I wish I bought it. Like, I honestly wish I bought it today to have it, to see
it. Yeah.
Just to know what the, kind of crap was in it. So I went, oh my gosh, is this what companies are slathering on our children? Like, I remember going to Claire's and Justice and seeing all those, you're in line and you're seeing all that crap on the side that they try to sell you. They think if they just put it with, unicorns and rainbows that girls are going to be. And unfortunately, again, and so there was another thing that happened a couple of weeks later, and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And so one morning in the shower, the name Good For You Girls popped into my head. And like, I'm just a very intuitive person. Like, again, I'm led by things like that, if you're aware. And I said, okay, if anybody's going to do this, it's going to be me. So I said, between my knowledge of branding, launching brands, working, in this sector, and my just passion for girls, and knowing that if I was a mom who wanted better for my daughters, that I knew there were other moms out there that were frustrated. And I knew my girls at 6 and 8 were just at the beginning, like they weren't even there. So I knew that by, 10 and 11, these moms are going, what is out there for them? And there was nothing. It was literally nothing. So I really was a little bit ahead of my time in recognizing that this demographic is just so underserved. And I was the first company in the United States to launch a brand specifically for this demographic.
It's, I was very excited when you reached out and when I got that initial outreach for your product line and what you're doing. So, I have daughters, I have twin girls, and they are now growing up in a day and age where everyone is a skincare expert on social media. And so they don't have social media. They're little. Like, I'm going to stall out on that as long as I can. But they do see stuff. They're exposed to YouTube. They see different things. And so they've come to me. It's like, oh, I really want to get, what I want to do a skincare routine. Mommy, what are you using? And I use all natural products. So I'm very particular, but I'm also very simple. I don't buy into all of the fads. I'm like, I need a very quick, 10 to 15 minute skincare routine. And I will say this. I did interview a dermatologist for the fall season of Still Roses for 2024. And everything you're saying, like she said it in her episode. Like, I mean, you have to be incredibly mindful of what's in the label and what's in the packaging, because we know marketing, right? I love marketing. I look at marketing all the time. Like, I do it for a living. But it's everywhere. And packages are specifically designed to grab the attention of women, grab the attention of young girls. But really it is what's inside the package. And that also the products that are available to you and what's allowed to be on the shelves vary state to state, which I also thought was very interesting. And I'm sure you found in your research as well.
Oh yeah. Country to country, state to state. And here's where, when I develop Good For You Girls, there's an emotional, during this time, it's a very emotional, it's an emotional transition, right? And I just, I saw it with my own daughters that they didn't want baby products, right? New adult products. So I really wanted to develop a product line that spoke to them, that they knew. So it's permission based, right? So it's sort of a, gift from mom to daughter saying, I get you. I know we have this transition. This is for you.
Yeah.
This is something specifically for you. And because girls are entering puberty much earlier, their skin issues are starting earlier. Sebum production, really at age 9. puberty is not just about the reproductive system. Puberty starts in the brain, the hypothalamus, the pituitary glands, the adrenal glands. It affects every system, bones, blood, your central nervous system. There's so much growth. And I think we forget that, right? This is the second largest growth since infancy in our girls. And I am a huge cheerleader for puberty positive. And I'm not talking we need to have period parties. That is not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about the language that we use around this transition.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we empathize and we are reminded as parents what their little bodies are trying to accomplish or accomplishing, yeah, it's amazing. And to support that with the proper terminology and understand that these hormones are happening for you, not against you, because they will use this, they will have this hormone language their entire lives. And hormones are your friends. They are not the enemy. And that's where so much we have this negative talk, menopause and perimenopause and all of this, And so when they come into this and accepting what is going on in their bodies and loving what's going on in their bodies, that will really set them up for just the language that they're telling themselves around it.
Let's take a quick break.
Are you interested in podcasting but not sure where to start? My name is Jenny Benitez, and I'm here to help guide you through your podcast launch and maintenance. Check out the link in the episode description for Podcasting Unboxed, your comprehensive startup guide. I am very excited to work with you. It's very interesting that you brought that up, and because you're right. Like, I mean, when I was growing up, the class that I got, it was a one-day girls only class, and it was specifically focused on you're gonna get your period if you haven't gotten it yet. Mm-hmm. And the biology of like, this is what comes out, this is what you do, this is what you handle it. Here you go, you're on your merry way. Now, what I'm hearing you say is, let's start preparing our girls early and give them the right like speech behind it, because again, I was taught like, oh, it's very hush hush. Don't let, oh my God, if you had, if you got it at your period at school and it leaked onto your, I had to wear a uniform. If it got on your uniform, oh God, it's mortifying. Oh, we don't want anyone to know about this. Oh my goodness. And now when I think about it, I'm like, this is insane. Like, we're literally like, and then, if you had to go to the bathroom, you were trying to be discreet and like tuck this huge, pad or whatever into your armpits that nobody sees it. This is really not a time to hide. Like, this is a time to really celebrate like your body. Like you said, this is a time of growth, and it's not just around like the biology of the reproductive system. This is your brain. Exactly what you just said.
Yeah, the reproductive system is last.
Yes.
It's your bones, it's your blood, it's your brain.
That's what I was just going to say to you. What I've noticed in my own daughters, now they're still very young. They're only 7. They're going into 8. But I actually do recognize now brain shifts in them. Mm-hmm. And I can pick up, I'm very in tune with them and their little personalities. And I can sense when they're having a moment of growth. Mm-hmm. And they'll tell me, they're very communicative. And one of my girls came to me, she was like, Mommy, I don't know what's going on, but I feel different. Something feels different.
Perfect. And that is exactly, the myelin sheath is changing in their brain. Their synapses are running much faster. They can have these outer body experiences. Mm-hmm. The cortisol, we call the cuddle chemical. Right. So when their relationships with friends, things like one day we're like, and then the next day they're intense.
Yes.
Like that's usually the first thing is you'll start that relationship. So giving them the tools when they're feeling out of control. And, when you start talking to them young, how is, any issue, anything that happened on the playground at school, blah, blah. And you have to pick up on those little cues. Well done, you, because then you can say the next day, okay, how do you feel today?
Yep. That's exactly what I do. And I explained to her, I was like, listen, when you feel like this, it's actually not bad. It's a little bit scary. I was like, because you feel different. I was like, but it just means that you're growing. And I explained to them, and their little minds, my husband and I have been talking to them like this since they were like 3. And they're staring at us like, what are you talking about?
At 7, they're not too young to understand the brain, understand their organs. And the sooner that you can help them with that, right?
Yep.
Like, and they get the basics, they get the heart and the lungs, they get all that.
Yeah.
But they never think about the brain, right?
Right.
They don't necessarily think about the blood, the bones, their skin. Again, they think, your skin is your largest organ, right? And it is so much to protect what's inside. It protects you. It's your armor. Again, a really positive word. And the majority, like, again, I love the fact that the bone growth during puberty for girls between 11 and 13, the bone growth is what we will actually lose in menopause.
Yes.
So it's like, if we understand all those things, again, they need nutritional support, they need the emotional support. And when we're reminded, it's not the suck it up and get over it. And by the time they give the talk in school, if you've already started to communicate with them about their bodily systems that all these hormones are affecting, they'll breeze through that. Because again, they're going to know about majority, because if you're talking about that, you're going to talk. And when we talk about the little stuff now, it makes those conversations, the harder conversations, or the more icky conversations to that, right?
It's a little bit easier. Yeah.
So much easier. And then you've already established yourself as the go-to.
Yeah.
You're the one in the know. Because at 7, you're the smarty pants, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the older they get, then you're stupid, right?
Right. I will say, what I've done too with them, and I have a question for you outside of this, but what I've also done too with them is, when they do ask me something, I'm very transparent and I'll say to them, like, you know what? Either one, I'll be like, well, how complex do you want me to go? And then I'll say, like, I'm going to try to break this down for you. But then on the flip side, I also say to them, why don't we look it up? Let's look it up, because what you explained in your journey is you're very self-researched, well-read. I do the same thing. I have a relative. She was the former co-host for me on the podcast. Incredibly well-researched, because she had to go through food allergies she didn't know existed. And then she found out in her like mid-20s or whatever. And it changed her life. And so the reading and the research is, I think, a crucial element for women. And I don't think we give ourselves enough credit for how much we take in. Yeah. And this is all also about like advocating for yourself, because for your situation, when you have a child who has severe allergies, or when you have a child that's ill, you do have to be their advocate. So you actually do have to do your own research, because the doctors only know so much. Mm-hmm. And it's not to discount their education, and it's not to discount their degree. They went to school. Like, we are going to put our trust there. However, there is research consistently coming out. Constantly. It's impossible to keep up with. I just had a doctor's appointment yesterday. Now, granted, again, I'm very well researched, and the doctor who came into the room started quoting statistics to me that I knew were not current. And I just kind of let it go, because I'm like, oh, okay, she's not up on her research, and I'm going to switch to somebody else because of the way she was treating me. But it's a good example to say, like, I don't have a medical degree at all, but I do work in marketing. And I work in the medical industry, and I do have to do quite a bit of research to make sure that I can articulate about the particular products that we're talking about. Like, and I jokingly will say to my family, I'm like, well, Dr. Mom's going to give you a diagnosis, but go to a real doctor too. And let's see, like, if it matches up. And 9 times out of 10, I'm correct. But it's also because of that research. So I wanted to commend you there for that, because, as a mom, you go to bat for your kids, and you're going to do that research, and you're going to do that legwork. But this also inspired you to take this path to make these products. And I want to hone in on the elements in the products themselves that are things that we need to be aware of. And not to put you on the spot, but if you know of any off the top of your head, because I didn't always look at those things. And I'm sure there's a lot of moms out there too that are like, well, I just bought this because it's marketed to my kid. I assume it's safe.
Right. And again, that's the critical thinking part, right? And I want to just touch on something that you said a little bit earlier in that, when we look at as women, right, the next time when do we really take care of ourselves? When's the next? In pregnancy.
Yeah.
Right. It's amazing. So what happens between, like, there's really nothing. Like the first time a woman will look at her health physically is when she's trying to conceive.
Yeah.
Like, so what's happened all those years before? Like, no, because again, that sets the foundation for our health as an adult. We need, again, to be our children's advocate. So for me, it was really ironic. In 2008, after I launched this company, the Environmental Working Group did a study, and they tested the blood and the urine of a bunch of teens. And they found chemicals, a ton of chemicals found in their blood and their urine that were only found in personal care products. And they identified that the average young person actually uses more product, is exposed to more chemicals than the average woman, because we kind of pare down, right?
Yeah.
And this is also part of what makes girls so fabulous, right? They're creative, they're experimental, they want to try new things. And this is what makes us so cool, like, right? It's just they are these little try it all, right? These little bundles of energy, and they just want all of this stuff. And as adults, we know kind of less is more, like we're more critical, kind of have that. So that study came out, and there is a link in one of my vlogs to it, Chemicals of Concern. But I always reflect back to the Environmental Working Group. I let a lot of these groups, like the breast cancer and things like that organization, I refer back to a lot of their research. And so my whole thing is if we even think that some of these chemicals, whether it's the fragrances, the dyes, PEGs, polyethylene glycol, there's a lot of ingredients that we know that we just don't want them building up in our systems. We know that they're bad. So why would we, like, if we have an alternative, why wouldn't we use that? So, dyes are a big thing. And now they're in, food. We're starting to talk about that. Like you said, the European Union versus the US, there's, sometimes companies will make two versions. You've heard the Fruit Loop thing lately. I don't know if you've heard the Fruit Loop thing, right?
Yes.
The dye, right. And, just the levels of autism that are up. And, there's just so much. So it's like, okay, I believe, the government can only regulate so much because it takes them so long to do anything, honestly. So it's all about consumer dollars. Honestly, that's what's going to move the needle. Just don't buy it, right? And if you're buying a product on a website or wherever you're buying it, if they do not list the INCI label, the full ingredient list, that's a warning. Like, don't even buy it. Steer clear of it. And then if, again, intelligent enough to say, hey, I'm picking up a label, there's an ingredient I don't understand. And not all, if it's I want to say chemical, is necessarily bad. Right. But if it's loaded, like if that's all that's in a product, right, then you might want to steer clear of it. Our product, and again, even some of the natural products, they have big long names, right? They sound, but they're not, right? It's an herb or a botanical, which in INCI nomenclature, you have to spell it all out, So I think it's just critical thinking. It's saying, hey, you know what? I'm worth reading a label.
Yes.
And that's really, and then, that's just for internal purposes. And then again, there's a lot of ingredients you just don't want on your skin, like alcohol.
Yes.
Like there's things which are in, because your skin is your protectant. So you do not want to damage the pH or the microbiome of your skin. Your skin is there to protect you. And especially in young people, the sebum is there again to protect them during this large growth, right? And the more sebum you have, actually, the less wrinkles you have as an adult, which I love to give talks to. Before COVID, I would go to middle schools and I would talk. And if you've never been intimidated, think of standing in front in an auditorium with 200 middle school girls. I loved it. I absolutely loved it, because my goal was to make them feel better about themselves. And the girls would, I'm greasy and acne and, whatever.
Right.
They would reluctantly raise their hand. And I would say, girl, you're going to have less wrinkles. And all of a sudden, it just changes the language. It makes them feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things that they're experiencing, the acne and the clogged pores, it's simply a bacterial.
Yes.
It's bacteria related. It's not necessarily hormonal related, especially when they're younger. And you look at their lifestyle, they're in class all day. They can't go wash their hands. I swear. And now they're exposed to this horrible hand sanitizer.
Hand sanitizer with the alcohol in it. Oh God, I know.
And so, I wish we just had free bath, like go to the bathroom anytime you want. Like this is,
I know.
hygiene part of it is just so important. Again, their scalp is changing, they're growing. And so you see patterns where it's more bacteria related. So what we really need to do with the girls is just get rid of the dirt, the grime, and bacteria, but without upsetting the microbiome or the pH of the skin. And that's where I formulate. I said, okay, what do we now? I make no claims against, it's acne. I make no claims on that. That the healthier your skin is and the more you can support your skin, the better it can, right? For acne. But we also think about hydration, nutrition. This is a time in a girl's life where they're not getting that support. They are dehydrated. So their skin and their pores are not doing what it should naturally do when they're well hydrated. They're not eating the best. They're not sleeping the best. So it's like all system failure, right? And so then there's this freak out. And then what happens is they overdo. And your skin, like your muscle has memory, your skin will always strive for that balance. So if you're drying out or stripping your skin, especially young skin that has all that yummy, delicious sebum, it's going to say, okay, hydrate, right? And it's going to kick it into overdrive. So, there's so many simple things that we can do, again, to ward off, some of these things, the changing the pillowcase on a regular basis, make sure that they are actually using a nice skincare routine before they use makeup. That's a biggie. That's one thing, is before they're introduced to makeup, because that just is the introduction of bacteria.
Yep.
So it's really, and again, just doing good things for them, even the deodorant and the bathing, all of those things, it's tools. It's a toolbox, right? That's the way I look at it, is it's like a toolbox for them, for their unique. And it's such a positive. And that's why I got, I was so frustrated that there weren't products out there, because it does start earlier. And I did a trade show once. I got to tell you, I might cry. I'm starting to cry. Okay. So I did, actually, it was a Whole Foods. I was standing at Whole Foods at dinner time, and I had my products. This is what happens when you're a small brand. You just have to stand there. And, there was a mother that came up, my daughter doesn't need this. Her daughter was probably around 11.
Okay.
Her daughter was hunched over, arms crossed, in just this horrible, and she needed this.
Yeah.
This girl was not given permission to wash her face. And I just saw, it was just so devastating. And it's like, how are you ignoring?
Yeah.
What? This is not, I am not pushing mascara on your 11-year-old.
Right.
That kind of thing. I'm like, this is something she needs, and you are completely blind to understanding. But just her posture, her behavior.
The body language. Yeah.
Oh, it's so devastating. And I was like, here, free samples.
Hey, you take it all. It's okay. It's fine. Take some free samples.
And it's like, so, but there wasn't anything again. And our girls, when they get to a certain age, they don't want the koala bears and the elephants.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's babyish. They just don't want that kind of stuff. And anything anti-aging is really formulated for anti-aging.
Right.
For women, it's really formulated for women. And not to say that there aren't female products that they can't use. But again, that's where I said, listen, I'm not going to pretend I'm going to be for everybody. But pick a lane, a lane. And that's my lane. This is my lane.
What I think is, what I think here, the biggest takeaway really is the self-education, and then also making sure what you said, your daughters, even your sons, boys need skincare too. We were joking here the other day, because my stepdaughter's in the beauty industry. She's a hairstylist, but she's always been really into all the beauty stuff. Me, not so much. My mom was I'm going to splash some soap and water on my face and some light cream, and that's it. That's where it stopped for her. So it was never really a big factor for me. But after I had girls, I started to, as they were getting older, I was noticing they are paying attention to pretty much everything I'm doing. And because of them, I've actually made it a point to step up how I'm managing myself, what I'm doing for self-care in terms of, and I don't mean self-care I'm taking a spa and I'm doing this and I'm spending an hour and a half. I'm not talking about that, because I don't have an hour and a half to spend on my skin. But I mean, just making sure that like they see like the particular products. And I was explaining it to them. I'm like, listen, girls, I'm like, this is what we're doing. This is, this is what you're allowed to use. This is what mommy uses. And making sure that they have that baseline. Because as you said, like giving them the information they need, this is going to prepare them for when they go out into the world. That's always how I look at this. Everything we're educating our kids on is, you're one day going to step outside of this house and you're going to get a deluge. It's a flood of information that's coming your way. So you need to have this baseline of, you need to, as you said, shower daily. Make sure that you have products that don't have alcohol in it in your face. You do have to look up the products. And what I think also is misunderstood across the board is that products build up in your system over time. So it doesn't mean if you don't have an allergic reaction immediately to something, okay, that's fine. But you might in a little while. I had a situation not related to skincare where I was taking all these vitamins, right? And I just kept adding vitamins to my daily routine. This is like I think 3 years ago. And so I had like this slew of vitamins that I was taking, not realizing that I was allergic to one of them. I still to this day don't know which one it was, but I started getting this alert. I would take all my vitamins and I would break out into a rash and everything would start to tingle. And I was like, I could not figure out which was which. I didn't want to waste time trying to eliminate, because at that point I was like, at this stage, like I can't be on Benadryl and try to be a person all day. Right. So I ended up like completely wiping everything out, got rid of everything, and then started fresh and was like, let me just do a detox, get everything out of my body, and then just go baseline what I know that I need. Because in the beauty industry, and for women especially, we are getting so much fed to us and we're told like, oh, you have to do all these things. You have to put the cold compress and you got to use this light thing on your face now. And now you got to put the light goggles with the light mask. And then you got to take this frozen ice thing and roll it over your face. And then you got to put the gel under your eyes. And it's like this wild ride. And 3 hours later, you're ready to start your day. Like, it's like the craziest thing.
I had a grandmother, and I love grandmas. They're great. I had a grandma call me and says, does my daughter need the fridge, the beauty fridge? I was like, no, your granddaughter at 12 years old does not need the beauty fridge. Yeah, no, save your money. But no, it's just so true. And I love you're singing to the choir, you're preaching to the choir. We have so many similarities, but it's just this constant bombardment. And again, like I said, their skin, your skin will always try to protect you, right? When a product, I always do patch testing. When you do a patch, try a new product, put it behind your ear, put it in your elbow. But when you're a parent who has food allergy kids, like I'm so used to elimination, like that is that's how we live, right? The process of elimination. But you do have that testing. And like when you have a dermatitis, like if you have something reacts your skin, has a dermatitis, well, that's not just a little rash.
No,
like that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Like, right. And how do they usually treat a dermatitis? They give you a steroid.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. And then again, your skin is now exposed, right? And a lot of these products that they're pushing, our young people, these 12-year-olds are running to Sephora to buy, are because this cellular turnover. That's the talk now, right? We have to turn the cells over. Well, the whole thing is their skin is the goal.
Yeah.
Right. So as women, their skin, so there's nothing to turn over.
No.
Right. They are not supposed to be turning over. Right. Their skin is growing. If you look at the face size of the head size of an 8-year-old, and you look at the head size of a 14-year-old, right? It's enormous. Like the change is drastic. So that sebum and that oils and that production is there to protect you. And when we're using alpha hydroxy acids, beta hydroxy acids, scrubs, and things like that, what you're doing is you're really exposing them to UV damage. They won't see the effects of that UV damage until they're adults, right? Let's be honest. So, I wish that these influencers were more pushing sunscreen than anything else.
That's what the dermatologist said.
My 21-year-old is hysterical. I love her. And she, again, both of my girlies are just so up to date on all of this. And of course, because of me, but my 21-year-old, she's like, Mom, I'm never going to get a wrinkle. Like she is the sunscreen queen.
Did she do a hat?
Oh yeah. She will not. It's awesome. And her skin at 21 years old is just beautiful. But she gets it. She totally gets it. And it really is a less is more. And honestly, I think there's a switch when you realize that your skin, like you can get to that place where you're just really appreciating, and here's the other thing that kills me, right? The glow. Yeah. All of these products to put back a glow, to give girls a glow.
Like they have it already. They have the glow. I want that glow.
So it's like, give me a pimple, give me that sebum back, give me all that. I'll take it. Right. And so that's what's just the crazy. Again, that goes back to their critical thinking. And that's what we can also do as parents is sit with them and talk to them. Like, why do you want this product? Who's selling you this product? Let's look at TikTok and let's see, earns commission, right? Let's see what's back there. What are the other products? And she's pushing this product, but she also pushed 30 last week.
Right.
So that's also another thing that we can critically, we can teach them that critical thinking. And then say, if they really want something passionately today, say, come back to me tomorrow or the next day or the next day. And right, they might be onto something else. But I want to touch on what you said about taking care of it. We are always at the bottom of the barrel as moms when they're little. Let's face it, that's our role. We get it. Now they're safe, right? You can leave the room. They're not going to hurt themselves, right? And they are watching you. And I love the idea because they are, and how you treat yourself is so huge. And now is the time to reclaim that, right? Do that journey with them and hold each other accountable, right? You can do those spa days. You can, let's pick a book. You pick a book. We'll have our own little book club. We'll do our own little downtime is critical. And when we talk, I don't know if we mentioned the adrenal glands, because the adrenals have a big effect also on puberty. It's pubic hair and body odor and the adrenals. So, we all know as adults that, we have adrenal fatigue because we're running. And we're now seeing a lot of the children are having a little bit of that fatigue as well. So giving our girls and our sons that specific time out, giving it to ourselves. Yeah. Like and it doesn't have to be 2 hours. It could be, half an hour. It could be 40 minutes, and then hold each other accountable. And then they're your buddy in this process. And so I love that bonding that moms, because I love to talk to moms whose daughters are not quite there yet, because you just memory banks, right? Because again, it's that communication that will strengthen your relationship. And then when they're 21, girl, there's nothing you can say.
Yeah, that's it. That's
right. Like, that's it. Right. So we do have, our time is so limited, and it's crazy because you don't think about it when they're 7. You think more of that window when they're 14, 15.
Right. Which is why I'm thinking of it now, because I know it's coming.
In college and And so that's why I love the language, the positive language. I love teaching them the ownership of their bodies and having pride. Because when you own something, you take care of it, you feel better about it. And it's not that you can't, have a Dorito once in a while or that kind of thing. But even your own journey as moms, hey, let's make a smoothie. Let's pick some of these out. Let's make some healthy granola bars for snacks for school, right? Like get them example, especially in their nutrition. Teaching your kids how to cook and be part of that process is huge.
Yes.
Huge. Get them involved. Don't just stick it in front of them. Say, hey, pick them, when they're older, pick a meal out. What do you want to make once a week?
Yeah.
Right. Or be in charge of the menu. I mean, that is because, again, when they go to college or when they're little, my daughters decided that they were vegetarians in high school, freshman year. And they were both on the swim team. They had to be on the swim platform at 5:30 in the morning. And if they weren't there at 5:30 in the morning, they were locked out. And so, so nutrition was super huge. And I was like, oh, you need to figure this out, because you need proper nutrition if you're going to be doing this, because this is a huge commitment. And I can tell you, both of them are amazing cooks today, because they learned. They said, hey, I have to feed it. I have to feed the body.
The part that I think is, and it's funny, everything you're saying, I'm like, oh, I do that. Oh, I do that. because,
I love that.
you know, I think that there's, when I was growing up, it was very much adults didn't explain it to you. It was just like, well, this is what it is. It's because I said so. And when I had kids, I was committed to not saying because I said so, because just I need them to understand the why behind it. Now, I will say this, it is kind of annoying now because everything is like, well, I don't understand why. And I'm like, oh my God. So I have to explain myself like to the umpteenth degree. Sometimes they mess with me, but sometimes they legitimately are like, no, but why? Like, why? So everything gets explained to them. And I want to encourage other moms too. Like, I know in the thick of things, sometimes you just want to be like, can you just do what I'm asking? I have those moments too. But what you're doing is preparing them for the world. Now, these guys, I mean, they drive me crazy. They're a tornado of energy. However, they also do step up and cook with mommy. And then we talk through things. I gave my son a metaphor the one day, and I want to share this. Is actually a little bit funny. He's very sharp, and we were cooking together, and we were making apple pancakes, and the outside of the apple was ugly, like the skin peel. So it was just discolored or whatever, but I already knew it was good inside. And so he made a comment to me. He was like, oh, mommy, no, this one's bad. Look at it. It's bad. And I was like, I used it as a teachable moment. And I was like, well, buddy, I'm like, just because this one looks different from this one doesn't mean that it's different inside. It's probably still really good. Let's take a look. And I opened it up and he was like, oh yeah, you're right. And I was like, yeah, you see, so you really can't look at the outside and really understand what's going on. You really have to take time to get to know what it is. And he was like, he kept going with the pancake mix. Then he stopped and goes, I see what you did, mommy. I'm like, oh.
Hey, I wish that worked with avocados though.
I know. No, avocados. That's what you can't. No, I will never use that on an avocado. Avocados are like a wild card. But that having those discussions with your kids and making them aware and involving them, as you said, because even like for nutrition, like we're talking about skincare, but skincare actually does start with what you're consuming and what you're putting in your body. I'm a vegetarian as well. So, but nobody else in my house is. But I make sure that there's vegetarian options available. At one point, there was a 1.5 to 2 year period where everybody was eating plant-based. Everybody else hated it. So they've all stopped. but there was part of me that was like, I had to stop it for the kids because I needed them to get their protein and I needed them to get certain things. So I was like, I can't sacrifice this. Like they're going to have to, go for the organic chicken, organic meat, like, go that route to make sure they're not getting those extra hormones in their food. But yeah, they're aware of vegetarian versus meat, like what meats are healthy. I allow them to eat bacon but I'll tell them like, this really isn't good for you. And I've showed them like the grease and I'm like, you see this, like this is going into your body and then it's coming out of your body in different ways. Like all of this builds up. My daughters have a sensitivity to dairy and they never got formally tested for it. But when they were very young, we were, bottle feeding all the time. They're having their bottles. And up until about 2 or 3 years old, we were still letting them have bottles. And, but they were throwing up a lot. Like it wasn't fever related, just every once in a while, like they just would be consistently throwing up. And my husband kept saying to me, he's like, they're probably allergic to dairy. Like their stomachs were like distended.
50% of the world population is lactose intolerant.
Yes. And people don't know.
Well, that number is growing 10% a year.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, so the thing is that, that protein, it is a great, it is a good source of protein.
Sure.
So we do need to find better alternatives. But yeah, no, that's a huge thing. And here's the other thing too, is kids, again, being a food allergy mom, if they don't like something, like if your kid doesn't like cheese, like who the heck doesn't like cheese?
Right.
Probably allergic.
Listen. Yes.
Listen. Or they could, so there's a gluten thing, and again, that's listen. And I talked to somebody the other day and they said, I had no idea that my son couldn't have gluten. And when we removed the gluten, he's like, Mommy, I didn't know my stomach wasn't supposed to hurt all the time.
Oh,
right.
Oh my God.
So, and so that, and it only works in, carrots. Most kids aren't, they're not allergic to carrots.
Right. I mean, carrots, broccoli. I think everyone's not.
I was that mom that like hid everything. Like I would whip them up and like hide the vegetables and stuff just to make sure they get them kind of thing, the lengths I went to. But it's so important, again, when you're aware, and again, just understanding that their little bodies are trying to do so much.
Mm-hmm.
I get so sad when people, oh, she's crabby. No, they're crabby. I'm like, yeah, you'd be crabby. Like you'd be crabby too. Like, right.
Yes.
It's like, so I think that's just, they were a great reminder of again, what their bodies, and at the same time, the being a student, a great student, the athletics that we're doing with our kids, it's insane, between
A lot.
travel and this. I mean, you would think that they were professional athletes in some of this stuff. And again, especially during a time with the bone growth. Now,
Mm-hmm.
we do have a sedentary lifestyle too. We do have that. That is not cool. We need to keep our kids moving. But again, when they are athletic and in a particular sport, we have to make sure that their bodies are being fed. We just have to, because again, understanding the development as adults, we sort of forget that. And I think that it's just so important.
And one other tip too, I want to talk about with the food intake that I had read when I was starting the journey of like overhauling my nutrition, because my nutrition was abysmal for a very long time. I think up until about 5 years ago. So I think it was like 35 when I started to actually pay attention. And I had read that in the grocery store, if you shop the perimeter of the grocery store, that's where all the fresh stuff is. Once you start going down the aisles, it's like a labyrinth of things that are stock full of like things you really don't want to put in your body. And now we have great options for like organic products. There's great options for gluten-free products. Thank God there's more stuff available. There's great plant-based products, but you still have to be mindful of which ones you're going for, because there are fillers in a lot of things.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I was raised, I'm old. I was raised in the invention of the pouch of rice, like the conservative.
I thought you were going to say the macaroni and cheese, because that's where I was.
Like it was not a thing. Like the ease, right? What they sold our mom,
Yep.
the ease and the independence and all these meals and whatever. So and again, I think when you're understanding too your kids, then you can identify maybe a problem, right? Mm-hmm. And again, remember, they're growing. It's like 2.75 to 3 inches a year.
It's crazy.
And that's when you're marking your door, when they grow, that's when we really start those conversations about, oh my gosh, you have all these hormones that are being released in your body that are supporting you grow. It's not a, Jack and the Beanstalk thing, right? They just, but they get it.
Yes.
Right. So
they are smart enough to get it.
They are smart. And so, and especially in taller, right? So they have the aches and the pains, right? And, we know that estrogen is very beneficial in girls for this growth process, but too much estrogen at the end of their growth can actually shorten their height because it closes.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, that's why if you pay attention as a parent, or again, if you know that your son is supposed to be growing 3 inches a year and he's not, it might be off. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't happen by the time they're 50. Like that happens when they're 11, 12. Right. Starting to watch this, and they're not fully developed until 18, and girls 19, right? And we know, again, their brains are not fully developed till they're 20. So we've got a really awesome window to pay attention and to just really take note. And if you have a doctor or a pediatrician that says, hey, yeah, whatever, you say no.
Right.
Give my kid a blood test.
Yep.
Right. Check the testosterone, check the progesterone, check the estrogen.
Mm-hmm.
It's a simple blood test. Right. I want to make sure that we're on target here. If you recognize something, or there's breast development happening earlier, right? They might have buds. I had brought my daughter, she had developed breast buds at 6 years old. Right.
Yes.
So it's like, and again, there can be surges and things like that, but I wanted to make sure that this wasn't a bigger issue that we had to worry about. Right. So if you're just an aware parent, because the worst thing, again, we can do as parents is beat ourselves up because we didn't pay attention. Right. Yeah. I wish I knew, but even again, having those conversations, how does your body feel? You can watch how are they hurting? Like it might be something, again, they are in it. So it's, you know what I mean? They might not be aware that their body, like, hey, you're kind of walking a little funny, or are you a little achy, or even their sleep patterns. Remember, their melatonin is changing almost 3 hours different.
Yeah.
So when you have a teenager, a tween that's not sleeping, that's an actual physical thing. So you need to adjust their schedule to allow for them to get that sleep that they need. That's not a my kid just wants to stay up late and play video games.
Right.
Real
That's like an actual thing. Yeah.
real thing that's happening to them, right? And and we're exhausted and we just want to go to sleep, and then we can't understand how we all go to sleep, right? So, and I always find it ironic, again, with the girl thing. I was just so meant to be a girl mom. It's just crazy. But I in respecting, they're coming in, we're going out, right? There is so much to communicate and to be together about, right? And again, how we treat ourselves, oh, I look horrible today and I feel good today. And we just have to check ourselves and watch how we communicate.
Yeah.
Because they do fear, right? They can fear that process. They can fear the aging process. They can fear, and they're not even there yet, right?
Right.
So, and again, that's why we have to be good to ourselves. We have to set examples. We have to model that behavior. And that doesn't mean I was truly transparent in running a business. And if I had bad days, good days, my daughters knew.
Oh, same here. I tell them, they know. I'm recording in my son's room right now, by the way, because we have guests this weekend, and I was like, I don't have any space. Like there's no my quiet areas are no longer quiet this weekend. So he like cleared his desk off. He made me a little welcome sign. He put office supplies and was like, Mommy, you can use my, that transparency, I think, wasn't present when I was growing up. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, be honest with your kids. They know when I'm having a bad day, like, and they come home from school, I'll sit them all down like really quick. I just want to tell you, I'm having a really tough day. Mommy might be snipping at you for various reasons. Sorry about that up front. And I'll apologize again later. So just take it easy on me. And it's crucial. And you're right. We only have a small window where they're ours and they're going to listen to us. And then that window is gone. So getting that baseline for their nutrition, their skincare, making them aware, and making sure that you're also acknowledging what they're saying to you. If they, for example, all my kids have sensitivity to dairy, and my husband used to get really mad at them before we realized what was going on. When we would order pizza, they all would pull the cheese off. Nobody wanted the cheese. And he would, still to this day, he has a hard time with waste. He's very old school. So he has a hard time with it. And I always have to nudge him, be like, babe, it's all right. Like, they're all sensitive to dairy. It's okay if they want to pull that cheese off. Like, if your kid doesn't want to eat pizza and is like, oh, I don't want that, try to pay attention. I know some kids are just picky and it's kind of a pain in the butt, but if you're paying attention to these cues, like, you actually might discover something, as you said, that like isn't on the doctor's radar, isn't on anyone's radar. My cousin that was my co-host, when she was, I think 10, 11 years old, she was having severe pain where she would be crying in her legs. And the doctors just said growth spurts. That's it. They couldn't figure out what it was. They were testing her for whatever, this, that, and the next thing. Couldn't figure it out. Said it was growth spurts. Flash forward 20 years when she actually discovers that she has celiacs, because she was going through, her body went through so much swelling that it started affecting everything across the board. She was getting dizzy all the time. Like, she was incredibly unwell. And a neurologist is the one who said, hey, have you ever actually gotten tested for this? So it's just making sure that you're paying attention to all those things. And it's a lot. Obviously, you have children, you're a mom, like, you're doing all the things, but trying to have that mindfulness. And even if it's like you said, which I think you said it earlier, that you had the idea for the good for you girls. Like, you had that idea. I have shower thoughts are like big deals to me because it's a moment of silence. If you really think about it, it's a moment of calm, and whatever comes out to you in those moments is something that's important. So I really think it's really critical to pay attention to yourself there. And the reason why I'm making this through line is I have shower moments where I'm like, oh, my kid said this. Let me make sure I check in on them with that. Or, oh, this was done. I have to check on that. Like, it's okay. Like, if that's your inspirational moment, like, go with it, pay attention, because that's your intuition saying to you, like, you got to do something here.
Yeah. And you said intuition. So I with girls in development, there was a book years ago. It's called Sleeping Beauties. It's by a psychologist. And it doesn't talk about the grim fairy tales like Sleeping Beauty. She falls asleep and she's kissed by a prince kind of thing. But what it does is it recognizes the need for girls during this critical age of development to look inward. and to go into themselves. That's the whole point of the Sleeping Beauty, the thing is to go inward to then emerge as the strong, powerful women that we're meant to be, right? And intuition, sixth sense, all of that is developed, I believe, during these years of development. So I think, giving our daughters and our sons the downtime to be quiet in their head is just, we don't talk about it enough. We really don't talk about it. I love, when I'm quiet, when I do, like, I'll paint a room. I won't have the radio on. Like, I'll paint an entire room in complete silence, because I've now welcomed those thoughts in my brain. So anything that gives me that time, even when I go for a walk, I'm not listening to music. I'm in complete silence. I work out in complete silence because I've welcomed how my brain processes, what's happening in there. And it's almost like I'm standing by observing it. Like, I know that sounds so freaking weird.
No. I meditate, so I understand what you're talking about exactly.
Like, okay, so my brain's doing its thing, and I'm just sitting here waiting until it figures it out. Yeah. And right. And so sometimes, like, I'll have something on repeat, and then all of a sudden it'll come, And so, I mean, I just always thought that was a creative person in me, because I struggle, the creative, brain in me is just like never shuts off. Yeah. So it's like, shut up already. But that is so important, that sixth sense. And we have that. And especially as young women, they're going to college. They need those goosebumps. Mm-hmm.
We have to make sure that they know that this is, you have to listen to your intuition. I have to tell you, if we go down that path, I'll be recording with you for another hour, because that's a big one. I'm telling you right now, that's such a big one that society has basically told us, like, we're crazy, and not to listen to that inner voice and to ignore it, that you're being paranoid. There's all these little subtle messages that have been told to us.
Knows that that's a real deal.
Total garbage. Like, you need to listen to yourself. Like, your gut instinct is like this is our survival instinct that's with us. And if you don't pay attention to that, you can find yourself in some very not good situations. So absolutely. Kim, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I'm going to link your website with your products in the description of the podcast. Listeners, check it out. I already have some things in my cart, so I know I want to start looking at things. But I encourage you to check out Kim's products, really, and be mindful of what you're purchasing and what you're, putting on your own shelf for yourself too, because yes, it's for our children, but also, like, really start to think about, like, what are you putting into your body through your skin? Kim, thank you again so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Jenny. I had fun.
And everyone, listeners, we'll see you on the next one. Take care.